tap the large Indian market. Fast forward, realizing the potential of Indian talent and ability to create disruptive technologies and solutions, the present government has laid down a plan to promote the Indian startup ecosystem. To partner with this ecosystem, we are now seeing more and more MNCs also joining the queue. Uh, in order to take us through as to what is the perspective of the MNCs now to promote the corporate innovation program and engage with the Indian startup ecosystem. We have today someone joining us directly from Boston. Although it's a midnight, out there, he has agreed to be on Namaste Tomorrow. Friends, it gives me a pleasure to have with us Adarsh Sowcar, external venture manager at Saint-Gobain Corporation. Adarsh is part of Nova, a CVC arm of Saint-Gobain with over $100 million asset under management and more than 45 companies under their portfolio. He focuses on corporate venturing, early stage investor partnership, and strategic investment in startup companies, which are aligned to the group synergy. He's also focusing on innovation in deep tech ecosystem. Thank you, Adarsh, for agreeing to be on this discussion at this hour, and welcome to Namaste Tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you, Utpal. Thank you for having me, and namaste. It's good to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Adarsh, let me start by asking one simple question. When it comes to partnering with startups,
Mhm.
US is a mature market where, CVC and corporate innovations we see, happening almost on a daily basis. Where do you see the situation in India?
Yeah, that's. I think you pointed out right. Corporate venturing is a fairly mature practice and an industry in the U.S. It kind of was pioneered here in Silicon Valley and spread across to all the parts of the world. Across all sectors, I would say in the U.S., most corporations have a, corporate venture arm. In the US, in particularly in India, I think it's a fairly, I would say, a new concept and still in its infancy. However, I think there are about 15 to 20 Indian, uh, corporations and Indian large companies that have set up their open innovation and corporate venture unit, and they're fairly active. I think they're active both in India as well as they are active outside of India in the US and in European startup ecosystem, which is a good sign for Indian corporations, as well as for the Indian entrepreneurs and the startup ecosystem.
Right. So I think so that's encouraging. I think so the way you being in US looking at the Indian ecosystem, and you believe that it's maturing and gearing up to partner with the startup. So considering the current situation, do you believe that Indian incorporate should engage with startup ecosystem more closely? And if that is the case, then whether it should be through a corporate venture capital or a corporate innovation program, just your perspective on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is, I would say the prime time for India. I think, there's a lot of expectation and optimism from the global investors in the Indian innovation and Indian economy and the growth story. And I think Indians have always been entrepreneurial. I think there's a lot of, I would say, um, entrepreneurial activities that we see across all sectors in India, and that's kind of part of the Indian DNA. So I think the Indian large corporations and companies should be leveraging this opportunity and enhancing their strategic value that they can get out of their engagements with startups. So I think I think this is an ideal time for Indian corporates and companies to look at innovation outside of their organization, particularly from the startup ecosystem.
Right, right. So, Adarsh, Saint-Gobain has been fairly active, and I think so. It has a robust mechanism both in terms of corporate venture capital and corporate innovation. Can you share some example of how CVC or corporate innovation has played a role at Saint-Gobain?
Yeah, absolutely. So for within Saint-Gobain, the Nova organization, which I am part of, that was a group that Saint-Gobain set up about 15 years ago. And the focus back then was to be the driver of open innovation for Saint-Gobain. And the scope and the goal of Nova until 2019 was primarily to facilitate open innovation initiatives and open innovation opportunities for Saint-Gobain, primarily working with startups and small and medium size enterprise companies for Saint-Gobain. And that was very successful for us. We were able to, bring a lot of new competencies that Saint-Gobain did not have in-house, and bring new ideas and innovations from outside within Saint-Gobain, and was able to generate new value and drive new innovation from those initiatives. So I think that success and confidence helped us kind of evolve and get into the venture capital space, where we have since 2019 been actively engaged in addition to making partnerships with startups, also actively investing in startups, and taking a minority equity position along with other venture capital players in the ecosystem. So, in the last 4 years, since 2019, we've been able to, uh, establish ourselves as a preferred partner for startups that want to, bring new ideas and innovation in the space that Saint-Gobain operates. And we certainly, uh, have seen the benefit of partnering with startups, and also being a support of them through equity investment.
I think so. I believe you will continue the same story, as you look at India also to partner with. So, Adarsh, in your view, more and more Indian corporates are also now looking at partnering with the Indian startup ecosystem. So, considering your experience, what corporate should keep in mind while engaging with the startups?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think for corporates, I think it should come from a lens of learning. This is a initiative, which works really well if the corporate is looking, more with an open-minded kind of a mindset and a perspective. And also, I think for the corporates, these kind of engagements, it's difficult to kind of expect results in the next quarter. So, often these innovation horizons and the timeline to see results tend to be, in months or a couple of years. So I think they have to, kind of take that into perspective and be more patient in terms of actually setting the right expectation. And then also, I think a bit of humility is something that the corporates also need to take into account. Corporates generally tend to be very large. They a lot of the management team and leaders within the corporates, tend to have a really good I would say, view of the business, and sometimes that might not sometimes it might kind of create a kind of a blindsidedness for them to actually look at new and disruptive technology. So I think uh, being open, being humble, and being having a win-win kind of a mindset in terms of trying to find synergies where the corporates can help and bring value to the startup and helping the startup's technology to the market, and then also looking at how the corporate can benefit from the ideas and technologies that the startups are developing. So I think it fundamentally comes from a learning and an open-minded kind of a perspective. And then lastly, I would say, this is kind of a common feedback I always hear from entrepreneurs is corporates are very slow. So I think startups are very nimble. They have few resources. They have to make quick decisions, and they often kind of get frustrated with the slow pace of decision making and progress that corporates make. So I think having a dedicated team or organization within corporate that can facilitate these kind of discussions and come to a quick decision makes it much easier for the startups. And then I think the startups really value that, and that's also a way in which corporates can build a good reputation for themselves if they're able to do all the right things. Like I said, then they would then become the preferred partner for new entrepreneurs and new startups to actually go and work with with those corporates.
So, others, key ingredients, what you have just mentioned for any corporates, to venture and partner with the startup ecosystem, not just partner with the ecosystem, but, be successful. And I think so this will go a long way, when corporates will start looking at it. Uh, so, uh,
Yep.
Saint-Gobain has, investment in more than 45 startups. Wanted to understand, what's the investment objectives, whether it's a strategic investment or a financial investment or, a fair mix of both. And when it comes to Saint-Gobain, which are the factors do you look at while deciding, making investment in startups?
Mhm. Yeah, I think for corporates like Saint-Gobain, we are a 50 billion kind of a revenue company, right? So, um, a small team of corporate venture, the Nova team, which is about 13 of us, um, cannot really make any sort of financial impact greater than what the businesses can bring, right, or the parent company bring. So I think for us, we uh, focus really more on the strategic synergies and the strategic opportunity that we can create for Saint-Gobain. At the same time, we want to be financially disciplined because our goal as a corporate venture is to be financially self funded. So at some point, we want to see positive returns from the investments that we have made in our portfolio companies, which will then help us self fund ourselves moving forward. So when we look at evaluate opportunities, it's a combination of both those factors. So we're looking at primarily looking at opportunities more from a strategic perspective, keeping in mind that the startup investment, we don't want to uh, lose our investment amount. So we're not primarily looking at maximizing our financial return. If it happens in the process, great, well and good. But that is not the first driver. The first driver is the strategic value and the benefit that we can create through that partnership. And then in terms of the criteria for evaluating a startup, I think it's multifold. So primarily, we look at the I would say kind of the opportunity in terms of the market opportunity. How big is the market that they're trying to address the problem? Is it a global issue or is it a regional issue? Is it a large enough issue that the startup can actually scale up and financially be successful and be sustainable themselves, financially be sustainable? Is What's the time required for these innovations to come to the market? Is it just an idea on the paper? Do they have a prototype? Have they already you know sold a product, or has it already been tested in the market? Is there enough validation from the market? We look at all the different risks associated with it. If it is a product that is regulated, if it's a regulated product, what are the regulation risk associated with it? If it's a product that has other sort of environmental risk, or if there is other risk associated with that, we try to evaluate those risks and try to stress test them to really see if this is something that the entrepreneurs can actually, or the technology can overcome. We look at the team for sure. Do we have the right mix of team within the startup? A mix of you know technical person, if it's based on a technology. Do we have the right kind of business acumen, skills that the entrepreneurs have? Obviously, if it's a technology-based startup, we look at the IP, the strength of the IP, and I think lastly, the other factor that we consider in our investments is who are the co-investors. Often, especially in deep tech sector, for these new technologies to become successful, you need multiple partners from the industry. So we also try to assess if the startup is able to get different partners, and the right partners for them to solve the challenges that they need to resolve in order to get the product commercialized and get them successful in the marketplace. So these are kind of all the different combinations, and we work very closely with many other VCs and CVCs. I think that also helps us, get I would say kind of a secondary layer of validation, because we also see other investors and corporates, believing in that technology and viewing it from their perspective. So I think those are kind of all the different factors that we are different lenses through which we evaluate an opportunity and then make a recommendation.
Absolutely. And Adarsh, a lot of points for the startups to take home, relook at, their business models and see what needs to be, plugged into when they actually try to engage with the corporates. So, one question that I have now, and I think so, this is a straight question regarding Indian startup ecosystem, which is growing at an exponential rate and will continue to grow. So, are you looking at engaging with the Indian startup ecosystem? And if so, can you give us more, tell us more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. We are actually today our team is based out in the US, Europe, and in Southeast Asia, so primarily in Singapore, China. So we are actually in the process of hiring a person in India. So I think our goal is to actively engage with the Indian startup ecosystem. And we believe that India has a lot of good innovation, and the market opportunity is huge. And because it's a fairly large geography and a ecosystem, I think it's really important that we have a person in India who can build connections and build a network, and make Saint-Gobain as a preferred corporate for the entrepreneurs to work with us. So I think it's going to take some time, but we definitely are interested and committed to work towards it.
Well, that's great to know, Adarsh. A multinational company like Saint-Gobain, having a operation across the globe and multiple business verticals, closely looking at the Indian startup ecosystem and trying to engage with them. I think so. This is really an encouraging word for the Indian startup ecosystem. Having said that, Saint-Gobain has various business verticals. So within that, which are the areas that you are looking at where such synergies can be developed with the Indian startup ecosystem?
Yeah, Saint-Gobain is a large company with multiple business units. I would say primarily we are a material science company focused on the construction sector, where our value proposition and goal is to develop light and sustainable construction products, which are more energy efficient and low carbon, good for the environment. And then the other sector for us is the industrial markets, where we are focused on decarbonizing heavy industry. So those are our two main businesses of Saint-Gobain from a corporate level. And from the venture side, we are interested in engaging in both of those ecosystems. India is a large country. It's expected to be the most populous country sometime this year, or it's already happened, right? In India, and like most other countries, owning a house and property is one of the largest asset classes and savings for people. Saint-Gobain has a large focus and presence towards the construction industry and the built environment. So we are really interested in engaging in all sorts of innovation within the construction industry. So it could be digital technologies, it could be robotic technologies, it could be materials, it could be new processes, it could be a marketplace. There are a lot of aspects of the construction value chain that we are interested in. So we are open to engage in all of those different parts of the innovations within those value chains. And then on the industrial decarbonization, there are a lot of different initiatives by the Indian government and a lot of initiatives from the Indian corporates to reduce the India's global or India sorry carbon footprint, and things like electrification of mobility. Like there's, I think India is probably the place where electrification of two-wheelers is taking place, right? We are interested in green hydrogen. The Indian government recently announced a huge policy to be the world's largest producer of green hydrogen. So there'll be new innovations and technologies that needs to develop and needs to be deployed in order to meet those goals. So we are interested in that. We are interested in sustainability, recycling and circularity. So I think all of those different topics that I mentioned, we would certainly be interested in evaluating the opportunities and understanding how we can participate and how we can leverage the innovation coming out of India.
Right. This is very interesting, and I think so. I just want to elaborate a little bit more on something that you mentioned about green hydrogen. Now, this is something which is an evolving area. A lot of people are trying their hands. A lot of startups are trying to find out new areas, new innovation on how they can make it happen. So from your perspective, do you see to engagement has to be with the startups who have already evolved in the technology wise, or you are open to partner with startups who are still, trying to develop something, help them, nurture them, and make them part of, your organization?
I would say both. So we actually have a business within Saint-Gobain called Advanced Ceramics. So we make a lot of ceramic products that are actually key, enabling technology for electrolyzers and PEMs and other, I would say, components required for green hydrogen production. So we have a lot of competency in house, so we can actually, leverage that and partner with startups. Um, so we focus, primarily in early stage startups. So, so I think in terms of actually uh, developing the new technologies, or we certainly would be interested in that. So that's more in terms of actually developing new technology. Internally, Saint-Gobain, we have committed to be carbon neutral as an organization. So we have our scope 1, 2, and 3 carbon reduction goals as well. So if there are mature technologies coming from the startups, certainly Saint-Gobain would be a good candidate to or an early adopter to use those technologies in our manufacturing plant, right? So we have a very large manufacturing footprint globally. We have about close to 1,000 manufacturing plants. In India, we have the world's largest float glass manufacturing plant close to Chennai. Right, these are all energy intensive manufacturing processes. So there are like multiple opportunities and areas within the manufacturing process where you know uh, you can bring new technologies to reduce the energy consumption and reduce the carbon footprint. So we are open to evaluate both of those things, either develop enabling Saint-Gobain technology and products in developing new technologies, or being an early adopter and customer of mature or technology that's already been proven.
Absolutely, I think so. Net zero and Industry 4.0, I think so, which is what I'm actually hearing out from you.
Yeah.
So, in order to achieve, what you are basically looking at, do you believe a corporate innovation program would be a key, and it can it can actually play a pivotal role, or do you believe it's more towards building something in-house rather than buying or partnering, with the startup ecosystem? So, what's your view on that?
I think both is required. Both of them are essentially the more tools you have in your toolkit, the better it is. The if it's a mature technology, it's the risk is much lower. Early technologies, early stage startups, the risk and uncertainty is pretty high. So I think it's a balance, right? Depending on depending on what your goal is, I think you can use both of those things. They don't compete with each other, right? For example, Saint-Gobain, we are primarily a material science company. We have aspirations to digitize a lot of our products, digitize a lot of our operations, but we don't have the same competency, digital competency, like say Google or Apple or some of the digital companies. Maybe partnering with a startup on someone, a startup that has an interesting digital technology, so that is very complementary. It will be a lot more difficult for us to try to build it ourselves, right? And most probably we won't be successful, or we'll take a lot of time, put in a lot of capital in order to get there. I mean, yeah. So I think it's both. I think and then corporates need to, have these different tools in their toolkit, and based on the opportunity, they need to assess which tools that they need to use and leverage.
Right, right. So, realizing the potential, what is your plan to engage with the Indian startup ecosystem over, let's say, next 3 years or 5 years?
Yeah, I think like I mentioned earlier, we would like to have a person in India, um, and we definitely want to engage with other corporates that are active in India, engage with universities that have and an incubation center. If there are other actors in the ecosystems, either a scouting group or if there are acceleration programs, um, I think we are open to engage with all of them. And like I said, I think we we are trying to start something this year, and we're looking forward to seeing some results, and we'll sure continue to um, do more in the next coming years as well.
Excellent. So, Adarsh, just a parting note, can you give some guidance to the Indian startups, how they can engage with Saint Gobain?
I would say if you have a interesting technology idea, and if you believe it's relevant to Saint-Gobain, based on your understanding of Saint-Gobain and based on what I've just described, please feel free to reach out to me, or Nova, the group, CBC group of Saint-Gobain. We have a dedicated website. Anyone can go there, upload their presentation or upload their idea, or even reach out to us through that website, and we'll be happy to engage with you and evaluate the opportunity.
Excellent, Adarsh. I think so. This is really encouraging. You have just given a complete different perspective on, how MNCs and specifically, Saint Gobain is looking at engaging with the Indian startup ecosystem. At 100x CVC, we are also partnering with corporates, helping them in identifying the best startups and engaging them to create the winning partnership. So, thank you, Adarsh, for joining today's session. I know that it's past midnight, and it's
Yep.
you must have had a long day. But again, thank you very much for joining this session.
Yeah, thank you. Just one last comment. The position that I was talking earlier on, I'll share the job description posting with Utpal, if you can put it on the either on the forum, or if you can publish it and tag that, and those who are participating on this webinar, or those who listen to it later. If you find it interesting, please apply for it. We're happy to uh, talk to you. And yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and have a good weekend.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks, Adarsh. And we at 100x also are looking at partnering with Saint Gobain and see how we can help as you move ahead with your journey in engaging with the Indian startup ecosystem. Uh, Thank you, everyone. With this, we end this session. Stay tuned as we move ahead in 2023 with more interesting conversation. Uh, Thank you, Adarsh, once again.
Thank you.
Good night.
Yeah, good day.
Thank
Bye.
you.